Okay, so this episode of Tales from the Gaming Table is about the time I used old person profanity back in a comic book shop slash Magic the Gathering shop back in the early 90s, and totally embarrassed myself in front of all the other gamers slash comic book readers.
Okay, so what did you say?
So first off, let me preference this one with a warning. There will be some profanity in this. I usually try to keep all my videos family friendly, but it's unavoidable in this story. What I said was, sugar honey iced tea. So, a little background. So this is this was like 1993 or 1994. And I would have only been about like 13, 14 years old at the time. And I had gone on summer vacation down to stay with my grandma for like the whole summer. And now coming from New York, it's just very common with your friends to speak with all sorts of profanity. Very, very common. People would even have signature profanity. Where I grew up, I had a signature profane phrase I would say as an exclamation that nobody else said. That was mine, and other people had theirs. It was a normal thing. So but you know, you're with your grandma, so I'm trying to watch my language with my grandma, and every time my grandma exclaimed, instead of saying a real profane phrase, she would shout, "Sugar honey iced tea," and that was her exclamation. And I asked her one time, I said, "Grandma, why do you always say sugar honey iced tea?" And she said, "Well, it's better than the alternative." Meanwhile, of course, it's an acronym for shit, so it's hilarious in that regard. So I was with her for the entirety of summer break, so basically 2 months from school. And when I came back, I had been with her so long, she got me saying it because I didn't want to curse in front of my grandma. So when I exclaimed, I started saying sugar honey iced tea, and I thought it was funny. And down around my grandma, it was, until I was back in the comic shop, which, for those who want to know, it was a shop called Powerhouse, which, if you're an Islander from Long Island, you might remember Powerhouse back in the 90s was one of the biggest and most well-known comic book slash collectible card game shops around. It was over on Hicksville Road. And I was back over there hanging out with everybody in the comic shop. And something happened, I think it was during a game of Magic the Gathering. Something went horribly wrong, and I exclaimed very loudly in a full store, "Sugar honey iced tea." The store went dead silent. Like you could hear a pin drop, and everybody stopped and turned and stared at me because of how out of the ordinary this was. And I looked around, and I just said, I mean shit. And everybody chuckled and went back to what they were doing. But it was a really funny thing that happened while I was gaming. And I was playing a game of Magic the Gathering, so I do feel this relates back to gaming. So that is the funny story of how I embarrassed myself while playing Magic the Gathering back in the 90s by using old people profanity.